Hey everyone, it's me, Daniel Tandock, otherwise known as RiceKombo Online, and welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see in the title and the description down below, today we're going to be rebranding into something new. We're also going to be covering Daggerheart, as it's been a while since we've had any videos on the channel. So we're just going to have our thoughts. But with this new channel and this new rebrand, I'm not going to be doing it alone. I have the pleasure of introducing a new friend and a new face that you guys will be seeing. AJ, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm AJ. I'm also known as Professor Bulk, and I'm super excited to be joining RiceKombo here on this journey. Together, we're going to be rebranding this channel to bring you even more exciting content, bigger adventures, and deeper dives into the world of tabletop RPGs.
Yeah, and so with that being said, we're excited to see where this new rebranding is going to be. We'll talk a little bit about that and then get in with the video with our Daggerheart impression so far. But with that being said, let me introduce you guys to BladeBound Saga.
Welcome to BladeBound Saga.
So yeah, that was a new intro. BladeBound Saga. We are excited to see what this actually will end up being. For the most part, the reason that we're rebranding is more so I'm GMing and I'm always so busy, and then AJ's part of the games and he's also hopefully GMing soon. But we just kind of wanted to kind of come together and make a more collaborative approach to content creation on this channel. AJ, what kind of thoughts do you have about what, or you want to tell everybody about what we're planning on uh, creating in terms of content?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to be creating more frequently. That's one of our biggest goals. We're going to be going more into character deep dives, GM tips, uh, live Q&A sessions, uh, just how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, all the things you expect from tabletop RPGs. We're just here to basically give you our point of view as people who have been in the TTRPG community for a number of years now. And yeah, we're just here to give you guys as much advice and hopefully have a good time along the way.
And we want to make sure that we are doubling down on the community aspect. So if you want to hear more from us, we want to get your input. Don't forget to leave those comments about what you want to see with this channel down in the description down below, or even more so, just joining our Discord. We have a lot of conversations about all the games that we're playing, but also more specifically, we've been having a lot of conversation about Daggerheart, which does lead to kind of what we want to talk about today, which is Daggerheart impressions. Um, we've been playing Daggerheart since February, so about 5 months now. And this has definitely become my favorite system. AJ, I don't know about you. How are you feeling about the system as a whole, like from the player standpoint for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed it. It's the difference for me between D&D and Daggerheart is that Daggerheart kind of lets you be creative with what you can do. Um, we've always kind of called it a rules medium, almost a rules loose sort of system. Um, but Daggerheart paired with your right kind of GM really allows your creativity to shine. Um, I love D&D. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to talk bad about D&D, but Daggerheart really uh, it encourages people to be creative with what your character can do. Um, all your spells kind of don't have a set parameters, so you can use it for whatever you want. You can use it for any situation. It doesn't have to be in combat. You can use it socially. Yeah, I just like I said, as a player, I really think that Daggerheart really gives room for creativity to make the narrative fit more to what you want it to be, as opposed to having to work around the system. You make the system work for you in Daggerheart.
Yeah, and I think one thing too that I've really enjoyed, and I think at first everyone was really on the idea of it's a very narrative focused game, which it very much
Mhm.
is. But I think the more I've been playing it, it's not just a narrative focused game, but a collaborative story focused game. A lot of the times as a GM, I swing the question of when you guys walk into a tavern or when you guys walk into the middle of a forest, what do you see? Um, which I don't think I ever did once GMing 5e. 5e was very much I plan everything. I kind of know what's going to be in the store or in the area. I mean, maybe I might use a random encounter table, but there was never what do you see in this tavern? What does what character or what person or what person in the bar sticks out to you, and then letting the player narrate or dictate a possible character. And the next thing I know, I'm over here improving a new character. Um, I know the first session we had, the very first session we had, there was a scenario where we walked into a tavern and I asked about a specific kind of person or what kind of specific person they see in the corner, and you narrated something along like a giant stag beetle
Oh
man.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was just a random thought. Hey, there's a stag beetle in the corner. So that became 30 to 45 minutes of our session was what's the deal with this stag beetle? And what do we do with them? Do we ignore them? Do we interact with them? Uh yeah, and I think Daggerheart allows that to happen, right? It's less the
Yeah.
DM telling a story and the players reacting to it, but it's kind of everyone building that story together, and which is I find to be super fun as a player.
Yeah, and I found that the more interesting was it wasn't just talking to the person. There was a whole chase scene of trying to take the
Mm-hmm.
stag beetle's muffins, because he wasn't wanting to
Right,
let go of the muffins.
right.
It was a whole scene that I was just like, I don't know where we're going. But the thing that I thought was really cool about it was it didn't really take too much time, like I felt like other tabletop RPGs have done. Like I feel like if a chase scene like that happened in 5e, we'd be derailed for about an hour or so. But in this system, we were kind of just going with the rules that Daggerheart had, even in the very first session, where it resolved in about 20-30 minutes,
Mhm,
um, which was very quick for all the spells that were being slung, and all
mhm.
the checks that you guys were making.
Yeah, and that's with Daggerheart. It takes away the initiative system. So if your character doesn't have anything to do, that's okay. They don't have to waste a turn trying to figure out, oh, I can do this, maybe this. I don't really know what to do. That's all right. If one person wants to take all the turns, like the one person being chased, hey, they're doing all this stuff. That's okay. That's the great thing about Daggerheart is that it's very free flowing, which is why I feel like that chase scene didn't drag. Like sometimes you can get into a scenario in D&D where all right, now I have to wait for this person's turn, and it drags. The story seems forever. But when in Daggerheart, anyone can go, anyone can create a piece of this narrative, and it just creates a fun experience. And it creates a like I didn't get the sense that that chase scene was dragging at all, and which I think made it way more fun to do.
Yeah, and because I think that brings up another thing. A lot of people have had a lot of critiques, at least in the discords that I've been talking to, some of the forums that I've been in. A lot of people are saying that if you don't have initiative, then you have people who are just hogging the space, which I think is a fair critique for the
Yeah.
most part. I think there definitely can be problem players, but in my experience, I've actually been seeing kind of the opposite, where players are wanting to make sure everyone else or the more important things are happening, and other players are more willing to take a step back. Like in our last session, there was I mean, I'll ask you what was going through your mind when there was um, an NPC that was basically taken by this dragon vulture hybrid and just started flying away. And your character, you took a couple turns where you were just not doing a whole lot versus the other players who were trying to take that thing down.
Yeah, I'm playing a melee character, and I had got thrown like to a very far distance, and there was just nothing I could do at that time, and that's okay. Um, so I just let the characters who were up there who could do something have their moment to shine. And I agree, I think that I don't know if I've run into a problem player yet, maybe one, but the majority of people are very much aware of people who haven't taken turns and trying to make sure everyone gets their fair share in the spotlight. And which is kind of speaks to itself as a community. I think that's a great place to be. We're encouraging each other to be creative and to have fun and to hey, as much as I want to do something cool, I want to see your character do something cool. And Daggerheart definitely brings a way more teamwork together. Um, you know, obviously with the tag team moves, but with the loose initiative system or the loose turn-based system, everyone's looking out for each other. Everyone's thinking about how can I help this person, or if I move here, can this person do this, and who should go first? What if I set up a trap and then this other character can come and capitalize on that trap or whatever. And with Daggerheart, it's so free flowing. It allows all that to happen. And if you get a really good group of players together, who are aware of that and try to, have fun together, man, it just creates like an experience that you don't get in D&D very often.
I think which really speaks to its kind of collaborative focus. Like
Yeah.
everyone's coming in already having that assumption that Daggerheart we're all working together versus D&D. I mean, that's kind of it's implied that you should, but the system doesn't implicitly say anything like that in the
Mhm.
rules. Versus, I mean, one of my favorite things that you guys have been doing a lot, and I see way more than I was expecting, is the tag team attacks, where someone's like, "Hey, I want to use my tag team. I want to make him vulnerable, so that way big what's it, Galapa guardian turtle
Yeah.
can just lay waste to um the big bad." And so you have
Mhm.
these combo attacks, whether it's just dumping a bunch of pure damage, or whether it's setting up a scenario with like uh setting up vulnerability, setting up restraint, so that way it's
Mhm.
easier for the other person to deal damage. I think it's just like a really fun thing to do. And I hear all the time in combats where someone's like, "Hey, do you want to do a tag team attack?" And they actually have a conversation about like, "I'm actually saving it for this," or someone saying along the lines of like, "Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I have this. We could do this together." I saw a double unleash chaos the other day, which I thought was
Oh, that's sick.
really, really wild, and just it was just so much damage.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, in the game that we've been playing in, and we have people of every range of experience with tabletop RPG. We have this is their very first tabletop RPG experience, to people who have been doing this for 5, 10 years, and I haven't felt any sort of disparity in experience when in these things, because it's just that kind of game where, as an experienced player, I like to open it up for new players. Hey, do this cool thing. And then new players are like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do this cool thing, you can do this cool thing. And so it kind of comes full circle where, uh, experience is not really needed to jump into Daggerheart. Just being creative and being open to ideas, uh, really creates, makes Daggerheart it's just great. It's just a fun game. It's just fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, going more into that collaborative effect, and then we'll kind of move on to our next section of impressions. Is from the GM standpoint, giving people that ability has been a lot of fun. Saying, "Hey, what do you like?" Really, just asking them, "Hey, what do they want to do, or what do they want to experience?" Like there was a point where one of our wizards who was part fungal had a conversation with a mushroom from miles and miles away about a player's backstory to see, because this the other player, we had no clue what their backstory was. And basically what ended up happening was they had a conversation with the mushroom through the fungal network. And when I asked, or instead of me describing to the players what was going on during that time, or what this mushroom experienced, I just asked the player who had lost memories what actually happened. And then I had them describe and narrate what exactly happened, because as a GM, I didn't know all the answers. I could have very easily, like I have in D&D, improv and come up with some sort of compelling narrative that has worked in the past. But giving the driver's seat to the player to explain their own backstory, even though it's kind of unknown to myself and the other players, I thought was just a really cool vehicle. Um, and I've seen that on multiple occasions, even in one shots.
Yeah, it gives a player like a sense of ownership, I guess you could say, where like what my character's backstory, it matters to what's happening, or what I want to create in this narrative. It matters. It affects the story. It affects everyone's, everyone's experience. So it's really nice because um D&D can kind of, like I said in the beginning, feel more of a, the DM has the story and the players are playing out that story, and obviously we can always derail D&D sessions, but Daggerheart feels like a, hey, the DM's going to write on this side of the page and the players are going to write on this side of the page, and we're going to create this story together. And it's it's uh it's just different. It's a different experience from all the tabletop RPGs that I played. So
Yeah,
and I've
that's a
thoroughly
really good way to
enjoyed
put
it.
it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say the GM writes on one side and that we write on the other one, because that, or we write on the other side, because I don't think I've ever heard anybody say something like that. But that's totally exactly how I feel about Daggerheart, even at high level. Um, that being said, when it comes to Daggerheart, obviously there are things. It's a beta. There are things that we need to that it's going to be working on, improving on continually. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess the first question I'll ask is, what about Daggerheart do you think there needs to be improvement? Where do you think we still need to see a lot more growth in terms of the TTRPG as it's run, but also maybe even what we can see in the future?
Yeah. I think there needs to be a balance between the big bads and the opponents that in combat, because it's kind of hard to gauge, at least in my opinion. It's hard to gauge, hey, am I doing a lot of damage? Am I doing a little bit of damage? Um, the thresholds, like the damage thresholds in Daggerheart, kind of make it it it's I don't know, it feels unclear, I guess is the best way to describe it. Combat can sometimes feel like I'd have no idea which way a combat can be swinging at times. Um, so I think that's probably one of the things I think about, the things that can be worked on is I think the narrative, um, storytelling wise is great, but the narrative in combat feels a little bit convoluted at times. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but
Yeah, it definitely. I think I'm getting a better handle of it.
mm,
We've been playing for 5 months. There's definitely a lot of a learning curve, especially with going from the action economy of fifth edition, where as it's generally, if as long as the player's action economy is equal to the enemy's action economy, you kind of have a balance encounter. There's a CR system that's not very great, admittedly in D&D, but in Daggerheart there very much is. Um, it is, I would say it is harder to balance adversaries, and I think that's part on the GM not really having tools or understanding the system as
yeah,
much, because it definitely gets better and better, and I think the my most recent games are definitely going to be better than the ones we started at
yeah,
first, because one thing that I was noticing, at least at the beginning, was players had so much power
hmm,
and things were dying fairly quickly,
hmm,
which is good to make players feel that have that power fantasy of being strong enough to defeat adversaries. But then from the GM side, it's like you also want to have a success or like a satisfying conclusion to a fight. That being said, I think one of the things that I've been learning more about, which just there just isn't enough resources on the manuscript as it is environments and utilizing the
hmm,
environments. Because when you have those environments, like in the last one we had, where it was like a kind of like a ritual, where if the players were standing in a certain area, their hope die decreased by down to a D10,
hmm,
which really did affect things. Like there's a less of a chance to crit. There's less of a chance for you to generate hope if you were standing in that area. And there also was a countdown running. So there were multiple things happening. And I think that's where, when it comes to those challenging fights, you have to utilize the whole system of Daggerheart, which the Sablewood Messengers one shot, which is kind of like the precursor um, introduction to Daggerheart, doesn't really deal with environments. And it does deal with environments in the Windfall Marauders one shot, but especially as you get to higher levels, it's hard to like figure out where that point of balance is. And so there's a lot of learning, and I think depending on the players, if they understand the action economy fairly quickly, which we did have players that really understood it, no, like learn how to not give the GM fear points and learn how to
yeah,
not give the GM action points, which just makes the combat easier for them. But then you have to utilize environments so that way when the GM is being starved, the GM still has some things that are going on. Um, so there definitely needs to be a lot of work on the environments and adversary side of things. We just need more of them and more
yeah,
variety, because it's, for the most part, I'm mostly homebrewing a lot of adversaries and mostly homebrewing a lot of environments. Kind of tweaking what's already there and then making my own stat blocks. Um, which has worked, and it's been really fun. It's been really fun games, but there definitely needs to be some work on that, um,
yeah.
especially for longer campaigns.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of using the fear tracker and the countdown tracker because it takes away just, hey, I'm just here to kill this big bad guy. It's like, hell, there is a consequence to taking actions that are not directly towards your goal, or not directly, towards stopping this guy from doing what he wants to do. So again, I know we're kind of going back into what we like, but I think that's a really cool feature to add. That's not just, hey, go fight something, kill it, come back. There's a lot more story to it.
So yeah, and so I'll kind of go another one of my critiques about the system that I think would really benefit is kind of items.
Mhm.
Um, Fifth edition has when especially with homebrewing in fifth edition, there's a very clear idea of how to create an item, or there's a very clear idea of, oh, if I give my players this item, um, this is the consequence that they'll get, or this is the bonus that they'll get. But in Daggerheart, it's kind of hard to tell like how when to reward players specific items because I don't really know where that power difficulty is. Like I don't want to give them all these rare magic items and then now it's going to be harder for me as a GM to build um, encounters because the players are just so much more strong or so much stronger, and the items don't feel nearly as satisfying as they did in 5e. Like
Mhm.
if you get a rare item in 5e, you kind of know how to use that and it gets used fairly frequently,
Mhm.
I would say. But in this game, items just feel like stat upgrades for the most part. I know that in our kind of uh, campaign that we've been running, I recently awarded you guys a bunch of items from the carcass of a large behemoth that you guys
Mhm.
defeated. Um, how have you guys felt? Or I guess from your end, how do you feel about itemization, or even like gold? Gold's another one that I'm like,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know how much things cost. Like, how much is an ale? How much is repairing armor? How much is the health
yeah.
potion? I don't really know.
Yeah, I agree. Gold is definitely a I don't even know if we've used gold in our session, honestly. It's because it's handfuls, chests, uh, and it's little, maybe that's a little too loosey goosey. Because you just don't know what do you spend it on then, and how much you things cost. Like, oh, here's a handful of gold. It's like, well, okay, what's a handful of gold? So you're saying that this cabbage is a handful of gold, but also this, dagger is a handful of gold. Does that make sense? You know, but anyways, I think the gold system maybe needs to get fleshed out a little bit more. And I agree with you when it comes to items. I feel like one, there's not a ton of items out yet, right? And a lot of them do feel like, okay, I'm boosting my to hit by +2 now, which is nice, but am I really
Or
doing that
just
much?
an armor +3 or something like that.
Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to more items that kind of change how your character plays. Um, like to put into, like, for my character personally, if I had a shield that had, spikes on it and I could do more retaliation damage because that's the build I'm going for, that would be cool. Not necessarily changing stats, but just changing how a character plays. Maybe you have a warrior who's really into the whirlwind ability. Maybe having an item that says, all right, well, when you use this ability, instead of doing half the damage, you do full damage, or something like
Be
that.
nuts.
Yeah, it would be nuts, but something like that. It's almost like finding getting items to improve what the characters want to do more, as opposed to just a straight stat buff by a little bit. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, it's. I think the hard part for me is in previous systems with items too. Like I'd give the big bad an item, and if you kill the big bad,
mhm.
here's his staff. But in this game, if you kill the big bad and he had the staff, I don't really know what that mechanically does because even from the adversary side, the damage that an adversary does is not related to the weapon they do, but to
Mhm.
their own stat block. So a vampire might have a sword, but the damage that vampire does is a static 2d8 plus, I think like 7. And so versus a weapon that's equivalent to that, it's based off of the hero's proficiency. So it's
Mhm.
very loose on how much damage that item will do, which is fine. There just needs to be a lot. There just needs to be more. Um, what's the word? There just needs to be a little bit more structure to it.
Yeah, yeah, I
Because
agree.
it's so loose.
Yeah, and
So
to kind of piggyback off of that is, in D&D, if you had a staff of power, you know what a staff of power does. It can cast all these different spells, right? That's cool. That's awesome. It's a really great item. It does a lot of things. How do you make a staff of power in Daggerheart? Are you giving people free domain cards because people's spells are based off of their domain and their domain cards? I don't think that's a really good way to go about items. Like if you get an item, you get this extra domain card. I don't think that's a good way to do that. So it kind of
Arguably, though, that could be cool.
it could be cool, but that
Arguably.
makes a DM's. I feel like that makes a DM's
Yeah.
life just like crazy hard.
Or it makes it where you have so many cards in a vault. Like, if you have this item, does that mean you have to put things in your vault? Because it's technically more than 5 cards at that point.
It's true.
So, yeah. That'd be interesting to
Or
play around with.
yeah, or make an item that lets you have one more card out of your vault, have 6 instead of 5. Oh,
Ooh.
that's theory. We're theory crafting
Okay, I'm
now.
totally sensing. I'm totally sensing like a completely new video about
Right.
what possible homebrew things that we should add. Interesting.
We'll make that a live session and have people pitch in their ideas.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Cool. So, we've been talking for a while, so let's kind of do one more collective. How you feel about Daggerheart overall? Where are you at? I'll start, and then I'll bring it out to you, and then we'll kind of close this video out. So, yeah, for me, Daggerheart is my favorite tabletop RPG. There are some good ones that are out there. DC-20 is another thing that we hope to eventually cover in the future. 5e 2024 edition, 5.5, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure we're going to cover a little bit of that because there are some things that are really cool. But Daggerheart as a whole has honestly exceeded my expectations as a GM. As someone who loves planning um, really interesting narratives, but then also being really collaborative with it, and then also being very improv-y with it. Like, I love when players create a situation for me. When a player created I see a large shadow about 100 feet away. I'm like, oh, interesting. Let's work with that. Let's talk to the shadow. And that shadow has now been, at least in one of our sessions, a fairly important NPC. Or even just having those funny moments of someone describing, oh, I see a furbolg and a dwarf. And then you have a really fun, interesting 15-minute interaction talking to some NPCs that I can essentially use to sow seeds towards the plot. And it really becomes one of those stories where it's not about getting my players to point A, B, C, D, and A, B, C, or D, following those steps. But it's, I have point A, I have point B. I want my players to get to point B, and whatever ends up happening in the session, we end up making it to point B somehow. And it's a really fun game and really works for me as a GM. There are obviously some issues, like we talked about, the items, the adversaries, but overall, this system works for me and my playstyle, and at least I've been really enjoying the time playing with all the campaigns that we've been playing in.
Yeah, I think what Daggerheart does really well is it bridges the gap from DM to player, but also from player to other players. I think connection questions at the very beginning is the absolute best thing that happened to TTRPGs. And I really think so, because there's no longer this awkward, hey, we all met in a tavern and now we're just gonna go start an adventuring party, right? It gives the characters a reason for why they want to play, or for why their characters want to do what they're doing. It allows the players to get to know each other, especially if you're joining a new group. And it just it gives everyone buy-in, because hey, I've created, or the players together have created the entire backstory for this campaign, essentially, together. And I think that just I don't know, for me it definitely has, for one, made it easier to play with new people, and two, just had a great time getting to know what these characters are and being able to create these different scenarios and how all of our characters uh, exist together, essentially, or how they all adventure together. And so I think that has just, like I said, it's created, it's one big bridge now. It's not players versus DM. It's literally everyone working together. And it's just, yeah, that right there has been awesome. And I've really enjoyed that aspect of Daggerheart.
Yeah, it's been really great. And you touched on connection questions. Even we didn't even talk about connection
Yeah, I
questions
know.
on the good part, which is really such a great part. But that being said, thank you guys for really watching this video and hearing our exciting update, hearing our thoughts about Daggerheart. We definitely want to hear your thoughts, like we said in the beginning. Um, let us know what you think about Daggerheart. Join our Discord and let's have more conversations. And then if you're wanting to play in any of the games, our Discord has all our listings every single week about what's being played. I'll GM some. I've been GMing a bunch of games. I think AJ's planning to GM
Yeah,
some games
yeah.
here in the
I'll be
future.
jamming some one shots here soon, so we'll be keep a look eye out for that.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, so with that being said, AJ, you want to close this out?
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the notification to stay up to date for everything BladeBound Saga. Until next time, let's keep those dice rolling and crafting those epic tales.
Hey, everyone.
From ink and steel, stories are forged. We are BladeBound Saga.